You know, one of the challenges that we face today as rooftop leaders, whether we own our own business, whether we are nonprofit leaders, or maybe we work in a corporation or a mid-sized company as leaders and we do sales or we're relationship managers. How do we keep our clients, our investors, loyal for the long haul? I mean, this is one of the toughest things to do today because everything changes so fast. I mean, we know that the average attention span of the adult human in American society today is 8 seconds. That's a second less than a goldfish. So, everyone is swiping to the right. How do we hold the attention of the people who matter the most in our life and build those old school, long-term relationships that spin off dozens, if not hundreds of transactions? Well, there's a science to that. There's a process to that. And it's what I call putting the relationship before the transaction. It's one of the most important things that we can do today as rooftop leaders. It's right at the heart of the methodology that I teach Green Berets going through the qualification course, that I teach law enforcement officers, and that I teach very senior business leaders today. Put the relationship before the transaction. I can tell you, operating in Central and South America in the 90s, one of the first things I learned from my team sergeant, Mike, was that when you go into an area, the first thing you want to do is you want to start working on the relationship in the embassy. You want to start working on the relationship with the host nation partner. And I'm not talking about necessarily with the unit or the organization, but with the individuals in that organization. Finding out who the relevant players are, who the relevant parties are, and then start to build a relationship with them. Or better yet, build on the relationship that's already been started by somebody else, and you just move it 5, 10 yards down the goal line. This is some of the best relationship management that organizations can do. But in order to make that effective, we really do have to put the relationship before the transaction. If you look at our society today, we kind of have it bass-ackwards, right? Everything, if human nature is an iceberg, okay, 20% of who we are as humans is above the waterline. And that 20%, we're doing transactions all the time. We're ordering stuff on Amazon Prime. We're trying to get as many sales as we can in one quarter. But below the waterline, 80% of who we are as human beings, whether we're on Wall Street or Main Street, are social creatures. We crave relationships. We need relationships. In fact, working in places like Afghanistan, status societies, the leaders of the tribes that's not an inheritance. It's not like a kingship. The leaders who lead tribes are actually the ones with the biggest relationship portfolio because they are the ones who can move people to take actions. The more relationships you have, the more transactions that come out of those relationships. And it's not just in tribal Afghanistan, it's also in the United States. David Knorr, in his book, Relationship Economics, he calls the relationship the greatest off-book asset for business leaders. Think about that for a second. Million-dollar consultant Alan Weiss, he says that logic makes people think, but emotion makes people act. And relationships are the greatest conductors of emotions. There you have it. All of this compelling evidence that tells us that relationships should be at the heart of everything we do, and the transactions come after the relationships. In fact, throughout human history, in those tribal places like Afghanistan, you first had to establish the relationship, then the transactions would flow. That's why I did the piece last week on giftology and establishing a human connection up front. It's the most important thing you can do when dealing with a prospect or someone else who has skepticism. But then once that human connection is made, I want to focus my energy on building the relationship. The relationship is truly the asset in your organization. And this is not the way we do it today. We do it the other way. We focus on the transaction, and then we look at the relationship as a byproduct of the transaction. Listen, if you're doing that in trust-depleted times, I want you to hear me. You are running off the cliff with all the other lemmings. You are going to get yourself in a corner where people aren't going to trust you and they're going to bail on your organization the next time the wind blows or someone offers a slightly better rate. Banks in particular, commercial banks, are making this mistake right now. They are calling relationships with their clients. And I know this because I own commercial properties, and the last bank I was with was atrocious at this, at claiming to have relationships with their clients, but they don't. What they have are transactions that are in their interest, and then they claim the relationship piece whenever they want to get something or deliver something, and it's seedy. We can smell it. So trust me when I tell you that as humans, we're social creatures, we're wired for relationships, and the people who are the most relevant in the room, who are the most relatable in the room, are the people who have the best relationships. So as a leader, your relationship portfolio is everything. Even if you're a junior leader, even if you're a junior associate, even if you're a junior Green Beret captain, focus on building those deep relationships with the relevant parties in your life. Not because you're trying to get stuff for yourself, but because you're trying to advance the higher goal, the company mission, the organizational purpose, right? A greater good. And you build relationships around that. And trust me when I tell you, it will change things in a powerful way. I had a plane ride with the general, one of the generals who was in Desert One, the failed Iranian hostage rescue, and who went on to have a very, very powerful impact on the formation of U.S. Special Operations Command in 1986. Guess when he did most of his influencing? When he was a major. After that crash, he started building relationships with staffers and congressmen and influencers. And he used his miles and struggle to build those relationships and cash in and do that greater good. And then one day he commanded that 4-star command. Isn't that crazy? But again, the power of relationships, you guys, is so important. So I encourage you to put the relationship before the transaction. Now, here's a couple of best practices that you can do. If you are a leader in your organization, senior leader, mid-level manager, start making it part of your culture to put that the relationship is the asset in the organization. What I mean by that is teach your young people, teach your associates that the relationship is part of the culture, and that everybody has a part in that. The other thing that I have a problem with in this situation is that a lot of organizations, they let the relationship managers or the RMs or the sales folks be the only client-facing part of this, and they don't talk to everybody else, the horizontal lines of business like HR and ops who do so much work. They don't make them feel part of the relationship process. That's a huge mistake. As leaders, we should make sure that in the culture, the relationship is known as the asset. We're all building towards that. And that relationship management is a team sport. Everybody, whether you're a vertical line of business or a horizontal line of business, you have a stake in that, right? Another best practice is if you are building relationships with a client or a prospect or your teenager, you build relationships when risk is low. Let me say that again. You build relationships when risk is low, not when the stakes are high. Our commercial bank that had our loan for our commercial property, they only wanted to build relationships when risk was high, when the stakes were high, when they needed something. When the sun was shining and everything was perfect, you never heard from them. That's not how you do it. Monty and I went out and pitched to Braden today in the baseball cage. The sun was shining. We had other things to do, but we looked at each other and we smiled, and we went out and we threw about 100 pitches to that kid. We build relationships when risk is low, not when it's high. You cash in on them when it's high because you've earned the right through well-built relationships. That's what leaders today understand in trust-depleted times. Those are the leaders who are going to own the room. If this stuff resonates with you, you should come to Rooftop Leadership Live and you'll learn how to really take it even deeper. April 3 through 5 in Tampa, Florida. Be looking for announcements on rooftopleadership.com. Do me one more favor. If this resonated with you, send it to one person in your tribe who could benefit from it, right? You can share it if you want. I want you to email it to them. Email it with a personal note that says, listen, there's something in here that if you use this, it could affect your bottom line and it could make you a better leader. Do that for me. Let's make Rooftop Leadership a movement. Thanks for what you do. I'll see you on the rooftop.